And that's really great for Jesus to have this big heart of compassion. After all, he's talked about throughout the Bible as this loving, great God. But what about us? Looking at myself, do I have the heart of compassion that God had and that Jesus showed? Do we have that heart of compassion? As Dave said, I was a church planter in Denver. And we moved to Denver by faith. We had some friends out there that said, come out and start this church. We really don't have anything to give you or any people to give you, but hey, come out and plant this church. And so we came out to start this church, and they gave us this little core of people, and we had about these 30 adults, but every single one of them was flat broke. And I'm like, oh, okay, all right. So we're starting with a group of flat broke people. And then we got a building, and God put us right on Colfax Avenue in Lakewood, Colorado, which is right outside of Denver. And it's a notorious street for all kinds of, just notorious. We'll just put it that way. So we were one block off of Colfax. And we said, we have got to reach the people in this neighborhood. And what are we going to do to reach the people in this neighborhood? Because the people in that neighborhood had nothing. I thought I had nothing. They had nothing. So how are we going to reach them? And how are we going to share the love of Christ? So we started having outreaches, and we partnered with a food bank, and we would get groceries at a really, really, really low discount price. And so we would get them, and we'd bring them in. We'd pass out flyers in the neighborhood. Hey, come to our outreach, and if you're in need of groceries, we'll give you free groceries. And it was so cool to see that group of people who thought they really had nothing to give. But what did they do? They gave. And in just a very short time, we gave out over 3 tons of groceries to people in our neighborhood who had need. It was so cool to watch. This one particular outreach, it was getting close to the end, and we were handing out groceries, and my wife was helping this lady carry her bags of groceries to her car. And as she walked across the parking lot, she kind of noticed that this lady was driving a really nice new car. And we were driving 2 clunkers. Wait a minute. Why should I be giving groceries to this lady? She's got a new car. And she kind of begrudgingly put the groceries in, God bless you, and all that stuff, and went back in. Not too long after that, I was helping the same lady carry another set of bags of groceries to her car. And I said, how'd you hear about us? And she said, we got a flyer. We live over here, and we just moved here to Denver, so we really don't know anyone. I said, really? What brought you here? Well, my husband's in Iraq, and I'm here with the kids, and we actually lived down in New Orleans, and our house was destroyed by Hurricane Katrina. And we really don't have anything. So these bags of groceries really help. Thank you so much. So we're driving home from church, as always, and we're going to lunch and everything, and I start telling my wife about this lady who lost her house in Katrina, and her husband's a soldier, and he's in Iraq, and she's alone with these kids, and they're in a strange city, and we were able to bless her, and I started describing her to my wife, and my wife's like, oh, no. She had the gold car, didn't she? Yeah. My wife felt so bad. She's like, I totally judged her. I totally thought, why should she be taking advantage of this system while we're trying to help people in need? Why would she come and take these groceries that somebody really needs? And she really needed it. She really needed those bags of groceries. You see, that lady, without a story, she's just taking advantage of the system, right? But when we knew her story, she was a woman in our community, right in front of us, that had an empty pantry and kids to feed. It's so easy for us to overlook people in need. And what drives us to overlook them or to ignore them? What keeps us from helping people in need? As we tackle this issue today and next week and even throughout this next year, and I really believe in in the next several years coming out, as we tackle this issue, I want you to hear the words of Jesus today. You know, when we put our faith in Christ, what Jesus really wants to do is he wants to take his heart of compassion, that heart we saw last week. He wants to take that heart and take out our old heart. He wants to put that heart of compassion in to us. But we got to let him do that. We have to let him take his heart of compassion and put him in us. You know, and all of us, we've all made excuses. I've judged people. And we've probably all judged people who are in need and thinking, well, if they could only do this or do that, they would be able to take care of themselves. And we've all made excuses. You know, the title of this message is, It's Not My Problem, It's Not a Problem. That came from Mike Rutt. We were talking through the series, and he's like, yeah, I have a friend that says, it's not my problem, it's not a problem. And is that what we really think? That, hey, if it doesn't really affect me, I don't really have to do anything about it. Maybe for some of you, you have no idea where to find people in need. And that might be really true. You might think, I don't see people in need. I don't see people who need groceries all the time. And maybe you don't. But hopefully our eyes will be open to that. Some of you may say, hey, man, I pay my taxes. Government takes care of those people. I'm scot-free. Really? Is that what we're really going to tell Jesus? We let the government take care of it? Do you know how many things they really mess up? Think about it. For some of us, it may be a total fear thing. When some of you may have heard that we were going out to feed people in the park, you might have gone, whoa. It might have been that real primal, I don't know. I mean, I'll support it and all. I'll pray for those people going out there to help them, but I don't know if I can do that. You know, I had a friend that said, I don't like going into hospitals because hospitals are filled with sickness and death. They're filled with sickness and death. And I said, no, you're wrong about that. Hospitals are filled with people who are sick and people who are dying. Or in reality, do we really find it easier to just judge them and think that they could just help themselves? Back in Maryville, Missouri, if anyone know where that is, give a hoot and holler. Nobody. Okay. I was just starting out. I was very new in ministry. I just finished up college, and it's like, I have no idea what it means to be a pastor. And there was this couple in our church, and they were really bad off. He worked for the university. He was a janitor, and he made less than $5 an hour. And their family was just struggling to get along. And they came to me for financial counseling. Yeah, right. Okay, I have no idea what to tell them. But I worked with them. And they had another set of friends in the church who knew that they were kind of behind in some bills and really wanted to help them out. So they said, well, why don't you come over to our house and do some yard work, and we'll give you $50 and to help you guys out. And so they did. They went and did the yard work, gave them the $50, and the next week I get this very angry phone call. Dave, here's what I did. And she told me the story about how she invited him over to their house and they did this yard work and everything. And she goes, and do you know what they did with that money? No, I don't know. You know what they did? They took that money and they went out and to a restaurant and bought dinner. Okay. I wasn't sure how to handle it. I'm praying to God for wisdom. Oh, God, help me, please. I have no idea how to handle this. So I said, so God gave me this, and I said, you know, you're a school teacher, right? Yeah, I'm a school teacher. I said, so you'd be okay with it if, like, the superintendent of your school called you and said, hey, I don't like how you're spending the money that we pay you every week. So I wish you'd just change your spending habits. Oh, I wouldn't like that at all. Right? I wouldn't like that at all. And so I said, So think about it. These guys have been struggling this whole time. Probably never get a chance to go out and eat. And they took advantage of this opportunity to get a little side job and take that money. And maybe for the first time in a long time, they just felt like they could have the dignity of going out to dinner like everyone else did. Maybe that's what their motivation was. And that was it. That was the end of the story. You know, it is so easy for us to judge people. So when was the last time you saw someone in need, and what did you do? Let's just really be honest with ourselves. What did we do? Did we see them and ignore them and just, I'm not going to do anything? Did you jump right in and say, hey, I can help you out? I mean, what is our reaction when we see somebody or hear about somebody in need? The Bible addresses a lot about what the responsibility of the believer is to those in need. And if you didn't hear last week's message, Andy went through a lot of those scriptures, and we're not going to take time to do that today. But Jesus addresses the very thing we're talking about today. What is the condition of our heart? If you know anything about Jesus, Jesus was a storyteller. And in Matthew chapter 25, he tells a story, and it's a very special story because it's the very last story Jesus tells. The very last story he tells. And he's telling it to his closest friends, his disciples. Now, as you know, Jesus went around the world and picked the 12 most perfect men to be his disciples. Some of you are like, huh, what? Some of you are like, no way. Man, he picked 12 guys that were totally full of problems, totally self-absorbed. You know, they argued about, well, can I sit next to you in heaven, Jesus, or are you going to let my brother do it, or can we both do it? You know, one on your right, one on your left, isn't that cool? Yeah, that's what they were concerned about. When parents were bringing babies and children to Jesus, for Jesus to pray for them, they're like, oh no, Jesus doesn't have time for kids. No, get them away, keep them away, right? When there's 5,000 hungry people and they're 2 days away from any town, and they've all run out of food, what do the disciples say? Their heart of compassion. Jesus, just send them away. So Jesus knew their hearts. Jesus knew exactly that these guys were totally self-absorbed, that they had no idea what it meant to have the heart of Christ in them yet. And he was going to die the next day and leave them in charge. So what's he going to tell them? What's he going to say about what it is to have the heart of Christ? So in Matthew chapter 25, we read this. And I'm going to read it out of the Message, and the words are going to be on the screen behind me. So you might not have that translation in your Bibles, but it really touches on some things. So here's Jesus, and he's setting the story up as a shepherd with some sheep and some goats, okay? You don't really see shepherds around too much these days, but a shepherd in those times was, man, a lot of people were shepherds. So he wants to paint this picture of the shepherd taking the sheep and putting them in one pen, taking the goats, putting them in another pen. And Jesus is the shepherd, and he's not talking about sheep and goats. He's talking about the people of this world. And what he's really talking about is those who really claim to know God and to serve God. I want you to get that. So it says, when he finally arrives, blazing in beauty and all his angels around him, the Son of Man, Jesus, will take his place on his glorious throne. And all the nations will be arranged before him, and he will sort the people out, much as a shepherd sorts out sheep and goats, putting the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, enter, you who are blessed by my Father. Take what is coming to you in the kingdom. It's been ready for you since the world's foundation. And here's why. Do you want to know why these guys are getting in? Here's why. I was hungry, and you fed me. I was thirsty, and you gave me a drink. I was homeless, and you gave me a room. I was shivering, and you gave me clothes. I was sick, and you stopped to visit. I was in prison, and you came to me. Can you see the heart that they had? Isn't that really what Jesus would have done for someone who was sick or thirsty or hungry? He said, you guys had my heart. You put your faith in me, and then you let your faith work it out in me. Then those sheep are going to say, Master, what are you talking about? I grew up watching Different Strokes, you know. What you talking about, Willis? That's what they're saying. Here the sheep are saying, what you talking about, Willis? What you talking about, Jesus? Oh, what are you talking about? When did we ever see you hungry and feed you, thirsty or give you something to drink? We're kind of confused here, Jesus. I mean, when did we ever see you sick or in prison and come to you? Then the king will say, I tell you the solemn truth. Many times as you read through the Gospels of Jesus, he starts off his teaching with this, I'm telling you the truth. And sometimes it isn't pleasant to hear. And sometimes it's really good to hear. But what Jesus is saying to us, I'm telling you the truth. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to let you off the hook. I'm telling you the truth. And this is what he said. This is why I'm letting you in today. I tell you the solemn truth. Whenever you did one of these things to someone overlooked or ignored, that was me. You did it to me. Think about that. When you saw somebody who was thirsty or hungry or in need of a friend, that was me. You did it to me. Jesus is saying he is that person in need. Now comes the bad news. Then he's turned to the goats, the ones on the left, and he said, get out, worthless goats. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't ever want to hear those words of Jesus. None of us likes to be called worthless, and let alone a goat. But he says to them, get out, you worthless goats. You are good for nothing but the fires of hell. And why? Do you want to know why? Why was he sending them away from him? Why was it? And Jesus says this, because I was hungry, and you gave me no meal. I was thirsty. You gave me no drink. I was homeless. You gave me no bed. I was shivering, and you gave me no clothes. Sick and in prison, and you never visited me. And what's the response of those goats? Then those goats are going to say, what you talking about, Jesus? Isn't that true? They're going to say, what are you talking about? Jesus, what are you talking about? When did we ever see you hungry or thirsty or homeless or shivering or sick or in prison? And we didn't help. And he will answer them, I'm telling the solemn truth. Whenever you failed to do one of those things to someone who is being overlooked or ignored, that was me. You failed to do it to me. Whoa. Do you guys see the seriousness of showing the compassion in the heart of Christ every day when you hear these words of Jesus? Notice both groups said what? What are you talking about, Jesus? We didn't see you. Because if we would have saw Jesus, the Son of God, thirsty, how many of us, we would have gone and got you a drink. Right? If we would have known Jesus, the Son of God, coming in all his glory, was hungry, we'd have fed up him a pan of lasagna. But we didn't see Jesus anywhere. But both groups had the same thing. Jesus is saying when we provide for those who are in need, we're providing it to him. So what does having a heart of Jesus really look like in a human being? I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about today. What does that look like? My dad has the heart of Jesus. When I was a kid growing up, I learned so much about following Jesus from my dad through what he did. See, Jesus had come in and already transformed his life. He had said, Jesus, I give you my life, and I'll do whatever you ask me to do. And so, throughout my life, I watched my dad's deeds, and I watched what he did. And that had a great impact on who I am today. A new family moved into our neighborhood just down the block from us. Her name was Carol, and she had 5 kids about around my age. Some were younger, some were older. And she was a welfare mom. Yep, that's right. She was raising her kids on her own. And that's all we knew about her. But my parents struck up a conversation with her one night, come to find out that her husband was in prison because he had stabbed her with a screwdriver while she was pregnant. Nice guy. And so they began to open up their hearts to Carol and her family. And we started doing life together. You know, we would go on picnics together. My family would have them over when they had a need. My family would provide for them. And it was so cool because my dad was always about, I want to share Jesus with people. And he usually shared it with his deeds. He wasn't a very big talker. So he wanted to share. So he said, why don't you guys come to church with us? So he invited them to church. Well, we had only one car. And they had a big family, and we had a big family. So my dad would drop us off at church, and he would drive back to our neighborhood and pick this family up and drive them to church every single Sunday. And Carol, and they became part of our lives. Now, eventually her kids grew up, and Carol went back into the workforce where she met another Christian man, and she got remarried, and she had a great life. And about 18 months ago, Carol died of cancer that she had been fighting for a couple years. Another man, his name was Randy. And on every Saturday night, my dad was not at home. My dad was down at the county jail with some other men from our church, talking to them and just building a relationship with them. Randy was a young man. He'd gotten in a lot of trouble with the law. And now he's sitting in jail. And the jail was actually kitty corner across the street from our church. So we really had no excuse not to do ministry there. But my dad went there, and he met Randy. And eventually, the relationship built, and my dad shared Jesus with Randy, and Randy gave his life to Jesus. And the relationship didn't stop there. Because when Randy got out of jail and he went to the halfway house, my dad was there. And he continued that relationship, and he continued telling Randy about what it really means to follow Jesus. And it was so cool because when Randy had served his time, he used his talents and ability. That guy could play the guitar, and that guy could sing. And he, all of a sudden, now he is in front of a church leading worship and telling people about Jesus. I don't know if many of you know this, but last October, we were actually in our house for one day, and I got a phone call from my mom that my dad had passed away. And so we had just got here to K2, and sure enough, we had to head back to Minnesota for my dad's funeral. And I can't help but imagine what heaven is like or what my dad experienced there. And this is only from my imagination. It's from no documentation that I have. I don't have the actual video of what happened. But I really think that when my dad passed away and he met Jesus, I know what Jesus said to him. Mr. Elshaug, I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was hungry, and you fed me. I was in prison and sick, and you came to visit me. And I can just imagine my dad going, huh? What are you talking about, Jesus? When? And here's what I really imagined in my mind is that Jesus is going to go, hey guys, come here. And out walks Randy, and out walks Carol, and out walks all these people who my dad was Jesus to them. He's going to say, Mr. Elshaug, when you did it for these guys, you did it to me. An organization has produced a video on AIDS in Africa. And as I watched this video, I noticed that it was about a church that actually saw the need in their community that they had totally ignored before. And I thought this was a promo piece for Africa and awareness of AIDS in Africa, which it is. But it is so much deeper than that. This story is so much deeper. It's about a church who saw people but did not see their need. And it's about a church that opened up their eyes and all of a sudden saw what Jesus was seeing. Oh, it's a great story. So as we're watching this, just let God ask you the questions that this man is asking us today.
Sometimes I get overwhelmed walking through the market. How many of these people have hope? How many are lost? How many are suffering? How many have AIDS? I've read the statistics. Many people I see right now in this crowd have AIDS. But what are statistics? We all have lost a brother, a parent, cousin, or a friend. We are all affected. My name is Straton Gata. It means I come with gifts. But sometimes I don't feel like I have much to bring. When Jesus met a blind man in the street, he was not concerned with how the man became blind. Jesus loved sick people even when everyone else ran away. AIDS. He has AIDS. I don't know why. Did the doctor give him a bad blood? Did he make a sinful choice? Or does it matter? Maybe it shouldn't matter. He is sick. Would I look at him differently if he had cancer? And his daughter, soon she will be an orphan and her life will be poverty. She has no choice in this matter. What am I to do? What am I to do? I am a pastor. I'm their pastor. They go to my church. They live in my community. I can't do much. I'm not a doctor. I do not have the cure. But here I am. I used to tell my congregation to help people who are sick. I thought that was my only job, to preach about compassion. But what if true compassion is to put your legs in someone else's shoes, to walk where they walk? I did not have this kind of compassion before. I started to talk about AIDS at church. I started visiting people in their home. I just show up And I cannot do this alone. This is Deborah. Deborah is a volunteer from our church. God touched her heart. There are many from our church like Deborah. The body of Christ, the hands and feet of Jesus. This man lost his wife several years ago. She died of AIDS. Then he got sick too. Now, he's at home and cannot work. He's dying, but his children do not know it. What will happen to the children? The children, they are HIV positive. They don't know it yet. What do I say to them? But I can be here, touch them, pray. Then it happens. Their face will change. You see some joy in their eyes. It is good. The hope comes again. I did nothing tangible to help them. I was just there. The church began to show this kind of compassion. Those who are infected are afraid, so we held their hands. Those who are infected feel alone, so we visited them. Those who are infected are confused, so we counseled them. Those who are infected feel rejected, so we accepted them. We loved people who were hurting. A few years ago, I did nothing. People in my own community were dying. They were dying every day. They died alone. They died afraid. They died rejected by the church. A few years ago, I thought preaching was enough. That was my compassion. But if we don't do something, who will? If we don't show God's love, who will? If we don't show up, who will?
And really the question is, who will? If the church doesn't, who will?